2003. My name is Janet Palmer, and I'm interviewing Charles M. Coe for the Veterans History Project at the Atlanta History Center. Also attending are his wife, Ruth Coe, and his daughter, Linda Coatsworth. Mr. Coe, would you please state your name and spell it?
Charles M. Coe, C-H-A-R-L-E-S, M for Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N, Coe, C-O-E.
And what is your date of birth and place of birth?
March 8, 1916, Lafayette, Indiana.
Which war were you in and which branch of service?
World War II, the Army, 2nd Armored Division, 92nd Field Artillery Battalion.
And what was the highest rank that you were
Captain.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about your life before you went into the service, what you were doing, where you were living?
Yes, I graduated from Purdue University in West Lafayette in chemical engineering and went to work immediately for Continental Steel Corporation at Kokomo, Indiana. And worked in the metallurgy department and eventually became superintendent of the rod rolling mill. And in 1942, I was ordered into the Army because I was a reserve officer. And they sent me to Fort Ben Harrison for physical, and they said I was eligible to be in the service, and so I was promoted to first lieutenant and sent to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And at that point, the 2nd Armored Division was to go on maneuvers, and because my record showed that I'd had quite a bit of electrical training along with the chemical engineering, they decided I should be a battalion communications officer, and so sent me to Bell Laboratory in Brooklyn, New York, to take FM training, frequency modulation training, because that was the new thing in radio. It was much better than AM, of course, much more clear and dependable. So while they were on maneuvers for a month and a half, I was taking schooling so that I could come back and train other officers how to use the radio properly and to maintain it and repair the radios in our battalion.
And how long were you there?
About a month and a half. And from then on, we were getting ready to go overseas to North Africa.
Okay, and when did you leave the United States?
In December, and I don't remember the exact date, but we arrived in North Africa off the coast about a day ahead of Christmas, and took Rabat, Casablanca, and Port Lahadi, I believe it's called, and not too much resistance. But Christmas Eve, we had a rude awakening in that the Germans welcomed us with a real heavy bombing. But fortunately, our training paid off because we had been taught to dig deep foxholes in the rocky clay soil. And we had done so, and all of the bombs missed us. So we had no casualties whatsoever. So that was our welcome to North Africa bombing.
And how long were you in North Africa?
About 6 or 7 months. And we worked our way across North Africa and ran the Germans back towards Bizerte, and finally they went all the way back to Algiers. And we stopped and trained and took rehab and so forth along the Mediterranean coast, and prepared for the Battle of Sicily. And I might say that those were enjoyable moments, but we got too much sun. I'm still paying for it with keratosis.
How were the conditions there? So as far as just your daily life and so on, how was it over there?
It was a pretty hot climate, but we were conditioned to it pretty quickly. It made us appreciate our own country because the Arabs were pretty destitute and pretty poor. So we sure made us appreciate home.
How did you hear from home very often?
About once a month I'd hear from them, and I'd write every other week or so and use V-mail, as we may have shown you. And it was photographed and reduced to where farms and chickens. And then our observer would go out in a Cub plane and fly over the Mediterranean along the coast, and when he'd see a dark shadow, he knew that was a school of fish. So he'd take a big landmine and put a grenade in it, pull the plug and drop it over, and of course it went off in a few certain seconds. I think it was 10 seconds, and it would blow the fish out of the water and stun the rest of them. So we'd go out in a boat and pick up enough fish for 3 or 4 days supplemental food. It's very, very good. I had some pictures here that showed some of the bass we caught along the Mediterranean that were about, 12, 15 pounds. This happened to be Captain Kemmer, who was a Purdue instructor, professor at Purdue, and Captain Crowther from Edmond, Oklahoma. Anyway, just happened to get some of the fish along the Mediterranean. Shows that we had some fun along with the work we were doing and training we were doing for the next invasion.
How did you feel when you were over there? Did you feel stressed all the time, or how was it?
That's a good question, because yes, we were afraid quite often, stressed quite often, but you just didn't allow yourself to show it. You couldn't let the men know that you were worried about anything. But we knew what was coming. We'd heard about German General Rommel's tanks, 88 millimeter tanks, and they were vicious, hard to knock out. And we knew we were going to be facing them in the near future.
So from North Africa, where did you go?
Went from there to Sicily, and fortunately I was in reserves in case they needed the 92nd Field Artillery, and they didn't need it, so we were in reserves. And the rest of the division took Sicily very quickly. And then we headed back to, in about 2 months period, I believe it was, 2 or 3 months, when we headed back to England. But that's kind of interesting in that to get to England, we went, I believe, it doesn't show it, but they said it was almost 2/3 of the way back to the United States.
Why did they do that?
And we were trying to make the Germans think that the 2nd Armored Division was being taken out of commission, being sent back. And after a year fighting in North Africa and Sicily, why, that seemed logical. But we did turn around and head back to southern England. And just before we arrived, I guess you'd call it Bull Manure Betty, on the German radio said, "Welcome back, 2nd Armored Division." We didn't fool them one bit. So then we trained in South England on the Salisbury Plains for about a year, almost.
When was that then? That you
That'd be late 43, part of 43 and early 44.
So what was your life like while you were in England?
That's interesting in that we made the best of it. For example, to enjoy weekends when we'd get off on a Sunday, we'd go to either Salisbury Cathedral or some of the other cathedrals, or to Stonehenge, which was an interesting old place. And over here in our country, we think 100 years is old, and over there it's several thousand years is old. But we enjoyed seeing the various churches and the scenery around Salisbury Plains. And then to make life even more interesting, we started up a 9-piece band and entertained the troops with a 9-piece orchestra. I had experience at Purdue doing that, so unfortunately it was on my record, and they told me to start a band, so we did. And we did that in England and later on in Berlin when we finally arrived in Berlin. Same thing.
What type of training were you getting in England? What
The training was all artillery, because that's what we would be doing. 105 millimeter howitzers mounted on tank chassis. We had 3 firing batteries, 6 of these for each firing battery. So we had 18 total in the 92nd Armored Division. And then we had in the 2nd Armored Division, there were 2 other battalions, so we had a total of 54 of these tank-mounted 105 millimeters. And so they were quite destructive. They could fire about 15,000 yards, about 9 miles or so, and wipe out a town in very few minutes. So Hope that hasn't been disconnected very long. Anyway, Sergeant Davis was lost then. We had a total of only 6 men lost in our headquarters battery. One officer and out of about 120. So that was extra good. One officer and 5 enlisted men. So we had very few casualties.
And you stayed at the doctor's house the whole time
Yes,
you were there?
yes, we sure did.
Is that somebody have you kept in touch at
Oh,
all with them?
no, I didn't know who it was. No,
you didn't.
no. No, well, we did check with a Dr. Meisner who verified that this was Hitler's signature. I say we, some other officer checked with him. And he said, oh yes, that is Hitler's signature. And I don't remember now who that was that checked with him, but he verified it. He was still in Berlin.
So then when did you leave Berlin?
Let's see, it'd be, I'd say about August, July or August. Let's see, we must have been there more than any 3 months then. Must have been there about 5 months. Does that sound right? Yeah, about 5 months, I guess. Anyway, about July or August, and came back to the United States, and took a little while to get out of the service and get home. And I had 3 months vacation coming, so that was added to my time. And I got good pay too, $150 a month as a captain, and that was good pay. That reminds me, I made a little money there in Berlin by selling my cigarettes to the Russians. See, they issued us cigarettes as a part of our food. We didn't know any better, neither did the government. So we had a couple of packs of cigarettes every other day or so. And I was just chintzy enough to save up and either save them for my buddies or sell them. And I heard the Russians had a lot of money. So I saved them up and sold them to the Russians.
You came back on a ship.
Yes.
Where did you come into?
Came into New York Harbor, and boy, was that a pleasant experience to see the Statue of Liberty. After 4 years, it's quite a pleasure. Yeah.
And once you got out, where did you go then when you got back in the United States?
Fort Bragg, and from there to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, and called my wife, and she came out to see me, and we were in a phone booth for a little while necking. Censor. Anyway, after 4 years, gee whiz, got to make up for it.
And so when did you get out officially?
Officially, it was February 26, 1942. And after about a month, we sold the house she had purchased in West Lafayette, and I went back to Kokomo, where I worked in the Continental Steel Corporation again, and became superintendent of the steelmaking division there. So kept me busy and out of mischief.
And when did you come to Georgia then?
Came to Georgia just four and a half years ago from Florida. I retired early at 55 and went to Florida and enjoyed the lake region down there and church and all of our square dancing activities. Started a square dance group. We really kept busy down there.
Are you involved in any veterans groups?
No, not. I went to one American Legion meeting, and we're trying to decide whether to join or not. Haven't decided yet. I donate to the Veterans of Foreign War and other organizations like that.
Did you keep in touch with any of the people that you were in the
Yes,
service with?
yes, very much so. Yes. Good part of them, most of them have died. This Captain Moyer, for example, just passed away the year before last, and then his wife just a few months after that. And his daughter just sent me something that he kept in his room that he was so proud of. And it's a smaller map of the duplicate of what we have here, just the same thing. But she said, you might as well have it. I have a copy. So she sent that to me. I was looking for some of his warmer medals, and she couldn't find any. But I know he got 2 silver stars at least. And we keep in touch with some of the fellow was the head of Fire Direction Center and Headquarters Battery, Robert Underwood, and I kept in touch with many for a while, and then finally one fellow who was chairman of our group passed away, I believe, Captain Ford out in Pennsylvania. No one else volunteered to do it. So that just almost stopped our reunions. But I still keep in touch with about a half a dozen of them. There's a Captain Wallace down in Columbus, Georgia. He used to run the newspaper there. And Colonel Trafford, who was injured in the war, and he didn't get to stay with us all the way through. And he ended up as a colonel because he was sent then to Vietnam or Korean War, I forget which. But we keep in touch with most of them.
Could you tell me about this vessel you have over here?
Yes, this is a casing for a 105 millimeter shell that we would normally have for our firing batteries. Now the projectile would go on up quite a bit higher, of course. This was a casing that we had, and I believe I got it in Paris. They had taken the casing and made handles on it and opened this up a little for an umbrella stand, I believe. But you can see where it had been fired here. These things, you can see the size of it and compare that to a 22 caliber gun, which makes a lot of noise. So you can imagine what kind of noise that would make. And one of your questions was, did they ever pull pranks? And very rarely, but once in a while, when I was down at the firing battery, whenever they get ready to fire, they say 1, 2, fire. But when I was down there, they would use hand signals instead, so that it blasts my eardrums, I suppose. You might look at one of these pictures here to show you a battery firing. I don't see it right now. But anyway, we never used earplugs or any kind of ear protection for the noise. They just go like this. But if they didn't tell you they were going to fire, and I had my back to the gun and the guys doing it, I was working on a radio or something, they'd go like this, and they'd fire and they'd shake me up and blow my eardrum out. I still can't hear very well. But that's kind of a thing they'd pull on us. There's a picture of a Siegfried line, one of the tank traps that we ran into. Still don't see the one that I was going to show you. Well, it's going to be noisy anyway, going through these papers. This is Salisbury Cathedral, by the way, in England, and you can't see it, but there are about 15 or 20 bombers flying overhead there. And here's a picture of the officer or sergeant giving the signal to fire. These self-propelled 105 millimeters, and they go like this, and then they count 1, 2, fire. And as I say, they didn't always do that when I was around. This shows, beg your pardon? show some of the prisoners we captured.
Take these pictures?
Yes, yes, I took those. Might add that these are all used, all taken with German paper. We had so much trouble getting pictures back to the United States, sending film back. I don't know whether it was X-rayed or what, but we lost a lot of them. So we finally decided to start our own traveling photographic department. And we'd capture, we'd go into a photograph area in some France or whatever. And if the GIs hadn't torn open each box, we'd find a box of paper that hadn't been torn open. We could make pictures. And in Berlin, then we had we found a studio that hadn't been destroyed at all. So we were able to make, I think I told them to make 1,000 of these. And of course they sold the next day. Everyone wanted one. But that's all on German paper, using our own photographic department that we set up in Berlin. And as I say, as we traveled along, we'd make pictures, not enlargements, but just contacts, so that the GIs could see whether whether the pictures were good and whether the camera was working all right or not. So that helped them a lot.
Is there anything else that you wanted to
Uh,
talk about?
Just that to point out that without the massive supplies from home, from the United States, and without air superiority and prayers and whatever it took from the Supreme Being, I don't think we could have won the war. I think that helped win the war.
How do you think has it affected your life? You think,
I think it's helped considerably because I can't seem to get worried about too many things, as she can verify. I even tell her I can put myself to sleep in less than 5 minutes regardless, and she doesn't believe it, but I can. And I did it all through the war. I could just concentrate on each part of my body, and I'd describe it, but I'm afraid I'd fall asleep. But
do they teach you to do that?
that's one of the things they taught. Mm-hmm. How to relax. Yeah.
Is anything else
Uh,
that you'd like to?
Not that I can think of. I had wonderful officers helping me. I believe all of them were college graduates except our colonel, and he's a West Pointer. So that's equal to a college graduate, I guess. But they were all top-notch officers. I mentioned that that one was a college professor of civil engineering at Purdue. And he was the head of reconnaissance. And we had to know where we were at all times. And if there was ever, at night, it was very difficult unless you'd see a little space in the clouds which would allow him to see a star, and immediately he could tell us where we were exactly on the map. It's very important to know exactly where you are. You can't be accurate in shooting at the enemy. You have to be very, very accurate. We had very good officers, and men were tops. They it's obvious that's why we won the war, because they just had a good attitude, top-notch men. Yeah, we couldn't have asked for anything better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.